friends. Welcome back to Something's Happening here at our super fun episode this week. Somebody think of the children. Thank you for being on this journey with us. This might be the episode nearest and dearest to my heart, at least so far. I have a burden on my heart because I have two young kids of my own, and I see the way that the world has tried to harm them over these past few years. And I'm horrified by it. And the more I study it, the more I see it in the pages of the scriptures, the more disgusted I am really by the entire thing. And even though I'm actually having a hard time talking about this throughout the week like this, I'm glad that we are, because the antidote to darkness is light, and the antidote to evil is righteousness. So I am hoping that this week we are shedding some light on these things that are going on in the world around us so that we can be informed, we can be aware, and prayerfully we can respond. So let's get started after you subscribe, if you're not already. Like the Facebook page, change the notifications according to the instructions underneath this video. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you're on TDI.org, TalkingDonkeyInternational.org, go to the podcast page and bookmark it. And now that we are done with that, today I want to spend less time looking at a specific way the world is harming our kids and instead look at what I believe is a failure of the church to respond to all of this and what that could possibly mean. So, when I say the church, I don't mean a specific denomination, although this article is looking at the Catholic Church specifically. But I'm talking broadly about the Christian church, because I think even though this is kind of an acute problem in the Catholic Church right now, this problem could be true of any clergy of any denomination, and it just happens to be happening right now inside of the Catholic system. Before we go to the article, I just want to say that it seems as strongly as God might feel against people who harm children, and we've mentioned a few times already the whole millstone around your neck thing, I have to believe that God feels just as strongly against his own church when we fail to stop this. I mean, clearly when we abuse children ourselves, then we are no better than the abusers outside of the church. But even outside of a specific abuse from the church to children, the church really has a responsibility to stand up for the weak and the vulnerable like children. And when we don't, or when we actively persecute those who are, I have a hard time believing that we are in any kind of a different camp than the ones who are perpetrating the abuse directly. So let's read this article. It's from the Daily Wire. It's dated December 19 of this year. And it says, pro-life Father Frank Pavone removed from the priesthood by Vatican. By the Vatican. It's the highest order. And he responds with a defiant message, what took you so long? So what's going on here? The summary says Father Frank Pavone, one of the most prominent U.S. Catholic priests organizing to defend life, which means he opposes abortion, has reportedly been defrocked by the Vatican with no possibility of appeal over social media posts deemed, quote unquote, blasphemous. Now, what is the nature of this blasphemy? You gotta wonder. Is it claiming that children are valuable to God? Because if so, here I am, blasphemer number one, right? I believe that children are important to God. So what could this man really have done to be accused of blasphemy when he is defending children? Now, here we go. A letter obtained over the weekend by Catholic News Agency said that Father Pavone was dismissed for his social media activity and, quote, persistent disobedience of the lawful instructions of his diocesan bishop. Now, I am not a practicing Catholic, friends, so I apologize if I just said that word wrong. It's not part of my theological vocabulary. And also, if I'm pronouncing this priest's last name wrong, then I'm sorry for that too. The article further says, Father Pavone was given ample opportunity to defend himself in the canonical proceedings, and he was also given multiple opportunities to submit himself to the authority of his diocesan bishop, said a statement attached to a letter from Archbishop Christophe Pierre to United States bishops dated December 13. It was determined that Father Pavone had no reasonable justification for his actions. And then it goes on to say, the statement notably refers to Father Pavone as a, quote, lay person, which means not a clergy, and adds that his organization called Priests for Life is not a Catholic organization. So, as I read through this, it seems that the blasphemy that he is accused of is less so wrong think, like bad theology, and more so his refusal to do what the church says, right? He is saying things that someone in the church disagrees with. They tell him to cut it out. He says no, right? He believes he is called by God to this purpose, to expose and wage war against abortion and to stand up in defense of unborn babies. And you would think that the entirety of the Catholic Church would support that. That is, in fact, not just a Catholic doctrine that abortion is bad. It is just about the oldest Catholic doctrine. Here's some history for you, some good theology, in case you didn't know this. People often, like opponents, advocates for abortion, right? The pro-life camp, when they are trying to engage Christians or people who are against abortion for religious reasons, they're often quick to point out that nowhere in this whole book, nowhere in the Bible, never from the mouth of Jesus, nowhere is there a single prohibition against abortion. And so they like to point that out to say, like, you care so much about this issue that Jesus never even talked about, you know? They're trying to kind of undermine the passion behind pro-life positions. The history I'm sharing with you today is that while it's true that this book that we call the Bible does not directly speak against abortion, it does speak kind of indirectly against it in a number of different ways. But the actual history that I'm going to give you today is that there is a different writing. It's called the Didache. It is allegedly a collection of teachings that were taught by the original apostles, the original 12 that were chosen by Jesus. And therefore it claims to be ultimately words from Jesus taught to the apostles, which they then taught to everybody else and were collected in this writing. The Didache is one of the oldest non-biblical church writings in existence. It dates from the 1st century, which means it's contemporary to the book of Revelation. It's really contemporary to all of the writings of the New Testament. And it was even considered by the church to be included in the biblical canon for a long time. You know, the church met many times over many years to kind of figure out what the Bible was going to look like. And until the very end of that, the Didache was in fact considered to be part. Imagine how different the world would be if the church had decided at the time to include the Didache in the Bible. And that would just disarm the entire argument, like, Jesus never said it, so why do you care so much? Like, well, but it's in the Bible from the mouth of the apostles, therefore probably from the mouth of Jesus. It would be there. How much different would the world be if there was a specific prohibition against abortion in the Bible? I'm going to have to ask God when we get to heaven why he allowed the church to exclude that book, knowing that it would allow for so much evil and wickedness in the future. In any case, All right, so this poor priest is trying to advocate for the kids, and he is defrocked. I told you we're going to talk about Molech today in more kind of specific detail. Molech, you can just Google this, Molech. Just Google it. And the images that you will see will generally be variations on a statue that takes the form of a man but has an animal's head. Often it's like a horse's head or something like that. And it's often erect, it's standing upright, or sometimes you see him like sitting down in a throne, but the top part of him is always upright. And he either has his hands like reaching in front of him, or it's usually in front of him, right? Because you have to put the child somewhere. And these are babies and newborns. Like, we're not talking toddlers generally, right? Who can run away and kind of fight back. But these defenseless, itty bitty children. The statue of Molech was heated, allegedly, like a furnace. And so in various accounts, depending on, what artifact you're reading about and what, dig and the various data you're working with, either the child was placed in Molech's outstretched hands and left there to cook to death. Like eggs on a frying pan. Or, even worse somehow, there are others where the arms and the jaw were hinged so that the statue would literally eat the baby. Right? The jaw would unhinge and open up, and the arms would go up and feed the child to the furnace inside of this statue where it would die. This is horrific. I hope that's not, I don't need to emphasize that. This is horrific and disgusting. And when you read about the ways that these pagan priests would keep the parents of these child victims at bay, you suddenly can see the power of music and rhythm, and you may want to change the kind of stuff you put in your ears and brain. Because when you realize the way that the devil uses sound to deaden the mind, maybe you realize the devil's been using those sounds to deaden your mind too. It's just something to think about. So I'm going to share these things with you. I brought some images today because I went to Israel back in 2018. And what you're looking at here is a picture of Megiddo, the ancient city of Megiddo. Now, if you read in Revelation 16 about the Battle of Armageddon, that word Armageddon is, it comes from the two Hebrew words Har Megiddo, which means the Mount of Megiddo. And it's ultimately pointing to this city. What you're looking at here is like a public square of the city. And you see this kind of like stadium-looking circle thing with the stairs in front of it. There was an actual statue of Molech uncovered here. And then here's the same thing, just I'm standing a little bit to the left. So here's that same kind of circular thing with the stairs in front of it right there. This whole area was used for Molech worship, which means kids died here. And in your kind of sanctified imagination, I want you to try to see that scene. Some poor victim child handed over for death by its own parents, whose screams and cries were assuredly drowned out by this chanting and drumming and, cacophony all around them, while dozens, if not hundreds, of onlookers cheered the whole thing on. It's gross. But I hope you can see, I hope that you can see clearly, plainly, objectively, that the devil loves this. That the devil just loves this. The devil is always after the kids. He has been since the dawn of time. And even directly here in Megiddo, in this place, used as the prophetic setting of the greatest battle between good and evil that will ever exist, the Battle of Armageddon when Jesus returns. It's the heart of Molech worship right here. This is where kids go to die. Horrifically. And ultimately at the hands of their own parents. So, I'm not even sure I can draw a bigger conclusion than that. This is the devil's home ground. This is his stomping ground. His comfort zone is the destruction of kids. And that means, as we are the enemies of the devil, we have to advocate for our kids. I know I've said the same thing every day, but I need to say it again and again and again and again, because the world wants to get them. And it's up to us to stand in the way. So I hope that you can sit with that idea until tomorrow when we wrap up this unfortunate topic for this week and hopefully draw some good conclusions we can take home with us. So make sure you're subscribed, get a good night's sleep somehow, and I'll see you back here again tomorrow for our final segment of Somebody Think of the Children. I'm Steve Hicks, and this is Something's Happening Here. God bless you.